Why would a powerful NATO country like Greece keep such a watchful eye on its tiny northern neighbor, North Macedonia? It's not exactly an arms race. Greece fields F-16 fighter jets, modern warships, and a defense budget that dwarfs North Macedonia's entire economy. On paper, there's no contest, and yet Athens monitors Skopje with the kind of attention usually reserved for bigger rivals. To understand why, you need to know that in the Balkans, history and identity matter just as much as tanks and planes. The story starts with a fight over a name. For nearly 3 decades after Yugoslavia's collapse, Greece and its northern neighbor were locked in a bitter dispute over the word Macedonia. Greeks argued that the name belonged to their own ancient heritage, tied to Alexander the Great and the historic kingdom of Macedon. For Athens, allowing its neighbor to use that name wasn't just cultural theft. It was a potential stepping stone to territorial claims on Greece's own northern province, which is also called Macedonia. The disagreement froze North Macedonia's ambitions to join NATO and the European Union. Every time Skopje pushed for entry, Greece blocked it. It wasn't until 2018, with the signing of the Prespa agreement, that the matter was resolved. The compromise saw the country officially renamed the Republic of North Macedonia. The deal cleared the way for NATO membership, which became official in 2020. On paper, the issue was solved. In practice, suspicion lingered. Even after the name change, Greek leaders knew that disputes in the Balkans don't disappear overnight. Old grievances resurface quickly here, and Athens understands that better than most. That's why it continues to watch its neighbor closely, because what happens in Skopje doesn't stay in Skopje. It can ripple across the entire region. Militarily, the imbalance is clear. Greece spends billions modernizing its armed forces, investing in Rafale jets from France, F-35s from the United States, and upgraded Leopard tanks. North Macedonia's defense budget, meanwhile, hovers around $500 million, much of it going to modernization just to meet NATO standards. Its air force is practically symbolic. A few helicopters, some light aircraft, nothing close to a fighter fleet. Its army is professional but small. Just a few thousand active personnel. Still, Athens doesn't dismiss its neighbor. Why? Because in the Balkans, it's not about who has the biggest arsenal. It's about alliances, geography, and politics. And North Macedonia sits at a crossroads of all three. North Macedonia's entry into NATO was both a relief and a source of anxiety for Greece. On the one hand, it ended a decades-long diplomatic standoff and brought another Balkan state under the Western security umbrella. On the other hand, NATO expansion always brings new complications. Suddenly, Greece wasn't just guarding its borders, it was tied to its northern neighbor through collective defense. That means if instability brews in North Macedonia, Greece is among the first expected to step in. Athens also knows that NATO membership doesn't magically erase internal divisions. North Macedonia has long struggled with ethnic tensions, particularly between the Macedonian majority and the large Albanian minority. In 2001, this nearly erupted into a civil war before NATO helped broker a peace deal. Those wounds haven't fully healed, and Athens knows that any major flare-up could destabilize the entire region. For Greece, which borders Albania as well, a crisis next door isn't just a neighbor's problem, it becomes a Greek problem overnight. That's why Greece not only watches, but also actively shapes North Macedonia's military development. Greek officers train alongside their northern counterparts. Athens supplies equipment, and the two countries conduct joint exercises. On the surface, it looks like cooperation, but behind the partnership is a clear message. Greece wants to know exactly how capable its neighbor is, and more importantly, who else is influencing it. This brings us to a familiar player, Turkey. For Athens, Ankara's growing presence in North Macedonia is a red flag. Turkey has invested in infrastructure, deepened trade ties, and even provided military support. For Skopje, this is an opportunity to diversify partnerships. For Athens, it's a potential threat. Greece and Turkey are locked in disputes across the Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean, and Ankara's influence just across Greece's northern border is not something Athens takes lightly. In geopolitics, location is everything, and having your main rival cozying up to a neighbor is reason enough to keep your guard up. Beyond Turkey, Greece also pays attention to the broader tug-of-war in the Balkans. Russia has tried to exert influence through propaganda, political pressure, and disinformation campaigns, hoping to keep countries like North Macedonia out of the Western orbit. The EU and the US push in the opposite direction, aiming for stability and integration. Greece, sitting at the intersection of all this, knows it cannot afford to ignore even the smallest shifts in its neighbor's political climate. Economics add another layer. Greece is one of North Macedonia's largest investors and trading partners. That gives Athens both leverage and responsibility. If North Macedonia collapses into instability, Greek businesses suffer. If foreign powers pull Skopje too far in another direction, Greek influence declines. In short, Greece has a lot to lose if it isn't paying close attention. The border itself is another reason Athens keeps such a close eye on North Macedonia. At first glance, it's a quiet stretch of land, marked by highways, farmlands, and crossing points, but borders in the Balkans are never just lines on a map. They're gateways for trade, pipelines for migration, and at times, routes for smuggling and organized crime. Greece knows that instability in North Macedonia could quickly turn this border into a pressure point, overwhelming law enforcement and drawing in military resources. Athens also understands the historical pattern. Balkan crises rarely stay contained. From the breakup of Yugoslavia in the 1990s to more recent political unrest in Bosnia and Kosovo, regional instability tends to spill across borders. Greece has no interest in being caught off guard again. So, whether it's monitoring political developments in Skopje, keeping tabs on Turkish influence, or tracking NATO commitments, Greece remains locked in. Of course, none of this means Greece fears a military threat from North Macedonia. That scenario isn't realistic. What it does fear is a different kind of danger: instability, foreign interference, or a crisis that forces NATO to act in its own backyard. For Greece, which already carries heavy responsibilities in the Aegean and Mediterranean, another front of uncertainty is the last thing it needs. This vigilance also shapes Athens's strategic thinking. Greece doesn't just watch North Macedonia, it tries to shape its trajectory. Every defense partnership, every economic investment, every diplomatic handshake, it's all part of ensuring that Skopje stays stable, Western-oriented, and, ideally, aligned with Greek interests. In a region where outside powers constantly test the limits, Athens can't afford to be passive. So, why does Greece watch North Macedonia so closely? Because in the Balkans, even the smallest neighbor can trigger big consequences. A fragile coalition government, a sudden clash between communities, or a shift in foreign influence. Any of these could ignite regional instability. And Greece, with its own history of guarding against threats both ancient and modern, has learned a hard truth. It's better to keep your eyes open now than pay the price later. North Macedonia may not be a military threat to Greece, but it is a geopolitical one. And in the Balkans, that's often the more dangerous kind.